My girlfriend can reverse time. However, the terrible side effect of her power is that every single time she uses it, she loses one full day of her lifespan. She always believed I was completely ignorant of this secret. So, in order to save her beloved childhood friend, she activated her ability 999 times. And in the process, she even killed me 99 times. Finally, on the 1000th loop, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. I looked at her and said, "Chloe, stop. I know it's convenient for you, but I really can't eat plain, unseasoned instant noodles for breakfast ever again. You didn't even leave me a single packet of seasoning. Not even a dog would eat this." Looking at the bowl of bland, unseasoned instant noodles sitting on the table in front of me, and then looking over at my girlfriend, Chloe, as she prepared a lavish lunch in the kitchen for her childhood friend, Blake, I let out a heavy sigh. It seems we've gone back to the previous day again. This was already the 1000th time. Nearly 3 long, agonizing years spent repeating the exact same day. And all of this was because Chloe was obsessed with saving Blake, who was fated to die accidentally in a tragic incident tonight. Chloe possessed a supernatural ability that ordinary people could never comprehend: time reversal. Unfortunately, despite trying 999 times, she still hadn't managed to save Blake. On many of those attempts, she had even lost her own life. But no matter how she died, even if it was just a second before her final breath, she could activate her power and reset the clock back to the previous day. At first, I tried to intervene and stop her without revealing that I knew her secret, simply because I didn't know what the consequences of disrupting time would be. Luckily, her behavior changed slightly with every reset, allowing me to try different approaches without making her suspicious of me. I tried arguing with her, pretending to be gravely ill, and even calling the police. But nothing could stop her frantic desperation to save Blake. The worst loops were when my attempts to stop her became too aggressive. Infuriated by my interference, she once stabbed me to death with a kitchen knife, leaving me to bleed out on the floor. For several loops after that, she found it too troublesome to deal with my interference every day, so she simply killed me immediately after reversing time before going about her business. In total, she had murdered me 99 times. She dared to kill me without a shred of hesitation because she believed I wouldn't truly die. After all, once she reset time, I would be back alive. But what she never realized was that while the rest of the world lost their memories during a time reversal, my memory remained completely intact throughout every single loop. Because of this, I never dared to reveal my secret to her. Who knew if she would execute me every morning if she found out? In every loop right before Blake died, Chloe would cradle his body in her arms and repeat the exact same words, 999 times. "Blake, don't worry. Even if you die, I will definitely save you." Then, the endless cycle of time reversal would start all over again. For 3 years, I was forced to witness their deep, unbreakable bond. It felt as though they were the real soulmates, and I was merely an unwelcome bystander invading their love story. I was exhausted. I desperately wanted to live a normal, forward-moving life, not repeat the same 24 hours until I lost my mind. My love for Chloe had slowly withered away with every reset. So today, I decided to make a permanent change. After Chloe finished packing the lunch she made for Blake, she walked into the living room and uttered the exact phrase I had heard 1,000 times before. "I have something important to attend to tonight. I won't be back. Take care of yourself." She turned toward the front door. As she passed by the water dispenser, her coat caught on a glass cup, knocking it off the counter. Before it could shatter on the floor, I casually tossed a sofa cushion underneath, catching the glass safely. She paused and looked at me in shock. Without a word, I stood up, grabbed the car keys from the TV cabinet, picked up an umbrella from the balcony, and handed them both to her. She asked in confusion, "What is this?" Before she could finish, I interrupted with a faint smile. "Aren't you planning to drive later? The weather forecast said it's going to rain tonight, so take the umbrella." Her expression flickered with complexity. She looked as if she wanted to say something, but ultimately just whispered, "I'll try to come back early tonight and make you a proper meal." I nodded impassively. Watching her hurried figure vanish through the door, I sighed again. The truth was, I hadn't watched any weather forecast. Chloe had an impeccable memory and never forgot anything. Across all 999 loops, she had never once forgotten her keys or her umbrella. But this time, because her mind was entirely consumed by Blake, she hadn't even noticed how unusual my actions were. Perhaps our love had been a mistake from the very beginning. 5 years ago, Chloe used her time reversal power to save my life. On that day, a few of my college classmates and I went swimming in the river. Midway through, a sudden flash flood hit, and I caught a severe cramp in my leg. My classmates were too far downstream to reach me. In my moment of utter despair, Chloe suddenly dived into the raging water from the shore. Unfortunately, she couldn't reach me in time either. As the current dragged me under, I heard her faint, tearful voice through the water. "Don't be afraid! I will save you!" At the time, I thought she was just trying to comfort me as I drowned. But when I opened my eyes again, I suddenly found myself standing outside the college gates, right at the moment my classmates and I were about to leave for the river. I was completely dazed, assuming it had all been a nightmare, until Chloe suddenly stepped into my path, hands on her hips, looking utterly furious. "You are not allowed to go swimming in the river today," she snapped. "It's going to be extremely dangerous." I was completely shocked. My classmates didn't know who she was, and an argument broke out between them as they accused her of meddling in our plans. But my gut instinct screamed at me that the nightmare I just experienced was real, and that she had, somehow, saved me. So, I canceled the trip and offered to buy my friends dinner another time instead. That evening, the local news broadcast reported a sudden surge in the river level, rising by over 3 feet in minutes. It was then that I realized everything I had experienced was real. Chloe possessed the power to turn back time. Chloe and I attended the same university. That night, I sought her out to express my deepest gratitude. She patted my shoulder with a warm smile and said, "I told you I'd save you, and I meant it." I understood what she meant, though she believed I was completely oblivious to her magic. Gradually, I fell deeply in love with her and pursued her passionately. Everything progressed smoothly, and we became a couple. Because she had sacrificed a day of her life to save me, I cherished her with all my heart, determined to spend the rest of my life making her happy. Unfortunately, Blake's return shattered our happiness. Although they claimed to be just childhood friends, their intimacy often crossed boundaries. Still, I trusted her. But when Blake died in a horrific car accident that night, an irreversible rift tore through our relationship. With each time reversal, that rift only widened. To the outside world, we were an enviable, loving couple. But while only one day had passed for the rest of the world, Chloe and I had spent nearly 3 years together in this nightmare loop. During those 999 days, because of Blake, I was berated, abandoned, and even murdered by her hands. My heart had died a long time ago in this endless cycle. I checked my watch. There were still a few hours left before the climax of the evening. I finished my toast and milk. Having eaten the exact same breakfast 999 times, the food had long since lost all flavor. After eating, I habitually cleaned the apartment. Then, I packed every single one of my personal belongings into a suitcase, leaving behind only a framed photograph on the nightstand. It was a picture of Chloe and me taken on our 3rd anniversary. In the photo, she was leaning against my chest, her head resting on my shoulder with a radiant, blissful smile. I vividly remembered what she had whispered to me that day. With me by your side, you'll always be safe. No harm will ever come to you. I had teased her back then. What if you're the one bringing the danger? She had smiled softly and replied, then I'll just reverse time. I can fix any mistake I make. I saved you once, Ethan, and I can save you for a lifetime. I had hugged her tightly. Okay, I'll protect you forever, so you can save me for a lifetime. Looking back now, romantic promises made during the honeymoon phase were nothing more than meaningless air. When she stabbed me repeatedly just to clear her path to save Blake, I knew our relationship had reached its absolute end. Perhaps her power allowed her to undo her mistakes for others, but for me, the psychological scars remained. If I were an ordinary person who lost his memory with every reset, I might still love her blindly today. But in a way, I was grateful. At least I wasn't being kept in the dark anymore. I took the photograph out of the frame, tore it precisely down the middle, and placed her half back into the frame. I erased every last trace of my existence from our shared home. Finally, I sat on the sofa, quietly savoring the fading scent of the place we had built together. I refused to fall into this endless temporal prison again. This time, I was going to help Chloe save her childhood friend once and for all. She had saved my life once in the river, so I would help her save Blake once in return. It would settle my debt of gratitude to her, and finally set me free. 3 hours later, I grabbed my suitcase, walked down to the garage, and drove straight to the headquarters of Blake's company. When I arrived, I saw Chloe pacing back and forth near the entrance, looking utterly pale and frantic. Today, Blake's phone would be switched off, making him completely unreachable. When Blake arrived at his company tonight and stepped out of his vehicle, a bomb hidden beneath his car was set to detonate immediately. In the past 999 loops, Chloe had tried countless ways to stop it, but she could never reach Blake in time to warn him. And every time he died in the flames, she would immediately trigger her power to start the day over. If only Chloe had slowed down, kept a cool head, and investigated the situation logically, she could have solved this long ago. But, as the saying goes, love blinds people to the obvious. Seeing her standing by the entrance, helpless and unprepared, I knew that in a few hours, she would end up resetting the day back to noon again. I parked my car and walked over to her. When Chloe saw me, her body stiffened and a flash of panic crossed her eyes. Ethan? Why are you here? I handed her a heavy jacket from my car. You forgot it was going to rain today. It gets cold at night. I brought you a coat so you wouldn't catch a chill. She accepted the jacket with a guilty, uneasy expression. Thank you. She clearly hadn't expected me to show up, especially since she had kept her destination a secret from me. Yet, blinded by her anxiety for Blake, she still didn't register how unnatural my presence was. Not that it mattered anymore. I looked at her with a calm smile. When did we become so distant that a simple act of care requires a thank you? She froze, unable to find an answer. Ignoring her silence, I turned back to my trunk and pulled out a heavy wooden crate. Chloe frowned, her eyebrows knitting together. What's that? I shook my head casually. Nothing much. Just a package I promised to deliver for a friend who works in this building. Her mind was far too consumed by thoughts of Blake to care, so she dismissively told me, "You should just go home." "I'll stick around," I replied, checking my watch. "You never know what might happen out here, right?" Chloe glared at me, her tone instantly turning cold and harsh. "I told you to leave. Go home." I ignored her outburst and leaned quietly against the concrete pillar behind me. "Fine. Stay if you want to be stubborn," she sneered viciously. "Just know that if anything bad happens to you, don't you dare expect me to save you." She yelled at me a few more times, but seeing that I remained completely unbothered, she eventually gave up. After all, in her mind, she held the ultimate safety net. Time reversal. Even if I died right here, she could simply reset the day once she saved Blake. My life and death no longer held any real weight for her. The woman who once swore to protect me for a lifetime was now hurling venomous insults at me and treating my life as disposable. How could she possibly care about one more accident? Before long, a few private investigators Chloe had hired arrived to brief her. In every loop, she hired different people to investigate the threats against Blake from various angles. But with only a 12-hour window and no prior leads, what could they possibly discover in time? Seeing the disappointment on her face, I knew her investigators had failed yet again. Clock hands ticked forward. Soon, it was 8 p.m. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb in the distance. It was Blake's vehicle. Chloe's eyes widened, and as soon as the car came to a complete stop, she lost all composure and sprinted toward it. "Blake! Get out of the car! Run! There's a bomb!" she screamed hysterically. Blake stepped out of the back seat, frowning in utter confusion. Inside the sedan, the hired driver, realizing their plot had been blown, panicked. Sensing he was trapped, the driver scrambled into the back seat, pulled a handgun, and grabbed Blake and his company boss, holding them at gunpoint. "Nobody move," the driver roared. "Step back or I'll blow their brains out." Chloe froze in terror. The building's security guards and private bodyguards quickly rushed out, surrounding the vehicle, but nobody dared to move against an armed captor. Desperate, Chloe held her hands out, her voice trembling violently. "Please, don't hurt him. I have money. I can give you whatever you want. Just let Blake go." The driver sneered at her with a grotesque grin. "Whatever I want, huh? How about you strip naked right here in front of everyone and let me have a look?" Chloe hesitated for a split second, then her hands moved to her collar. She began unbuttoning her blouse. To her, public humiliation meant nothing. Social embarrassment was irrelevant when she could simply erase the day's events with a single thought. As long as she could buy time to save Blake, she was willing to comply with anything. This exact scene had played out in dozens of previous loops. Every time Chloe began taking off her clothes, the driver would escalate his demands, forcing her into increasingly humiliating acts. And she complied every single time. She had backed herself into an emotional dead end, convinced that submission was her only option, never once pausing to think logically. Watching her go to such desperate lengths for another man, I was torn between pity and utter disgust. There was nothing wrong with wanting to save a friend's life, but her method of saving Blake was built entirely upon hurting, betraying, and stepping on me. She had saved Blake 999 times, and in doing so, she had destroyed me 999 times. If she had simply been honest with me from the very beginning, would I have stood by and let someone die? After all our years together, did she truly believe I was so heartless that I wouldn't help her save a human life? In her eyes, I was completely worthless. I stepped forward, grabbed the wooden crate I had brought from my trunk, and approached Chloe just as she was about to pull her shirt off her shoulders. I reached out and firmly clamped my hand around her wrist. "You don't need to take your clothes off," I said quietly. Chloe violently tried to wrench her arm free, but my grip was ironclad. "What the hell are you doing?" She shrieked at me, her eyes bloodshot with rage. "Let go of me. If I don't do what he says, Blake is going to die." "He's not going to die," I said calmly. "That man doesn't have the power to kill him tonight." My calm assertion infuriated the driver inside the car. With a psychotic glare, the gunman reached into his jacket with his free hand and pulled out a black detonator remote. "You think I'm playing around, kid?" the driver screamed, pointing the gun at Blake's temple while holding up the detonator. "There's a high explosive charge rigged right under this chassis. I press this button, and all of us go up in smoke." Chloe panicked entirely, thrashing against my hold. "No, Stop. I'll take them off. I'll do it. She swung her free hand and slapped me hard across the face. Snap. Let go of me, Ethan. Damn you. Half of my face burned from the impact, but the sting was nothing compared to the cold void in my chest. I looked down at her and sneered. You're supposed to be my girlfriend. Do you really expect me to stand here and watch you strip naked in public for another man? Chloe pushed me with all her strength, her voice filled with pure venom. Then let's break up right now. I am not your girlfriend anymore. It's my body, and I'll do whatever I want with it. Looking at her hysterical, desperate face, a cold smile spread across my lips. Fine. We're broken up. Hearing those words, Chloe froze momentarily, startled by the utter lack of emotion in my voice. I released her arm, turned away, and walked straight toward the armed driver, my voice dripping with deliberate provocation. Hey, scum! You're holding a detonator, aren't you? Go on then, press it. If you blow up the bomb, you die too. Do you actually have the guts to press it? Ethan, stop! Blake yelled from inside the car, his voice cracking in terror. Don't provoke him! He'll kill us all! I ignored Blake completely, and stepped even closer to the vehicle, mocking the gunman. Look at you. You're just a coward putting on a show. You don't dare press it. Enraged beyond reason, the driver screamed, Die in hell! And slammed his thumb down on the red detonation button. Behind me, Chloe let out a blood-curdling scream. No! A second passed, then two. Silence filled the air. There was no explosion, no fire. Nothing happened. The driver stared down at the remote control in absolute disbelief, furiously mashing the button over and over again. Everyone on the scene stood frozen in shock. The gunman was the first to break the stunned silence. Why didn't it detonate? I smirked, gesturing toward the heavy wooden crate resting beside my feet. Ever heard of a high-powered military signal jammer? The moment I opened that box, every radio frequency within a 200-yard radius was completely blocked. Chloe stared at the wooden box in sudden realization, remembering the crate I had carried out from my car earlier. Now, real panic set in for the gunman. Realizing his bomb was useless, he pressed the barrel of his pistol directly against Blake's temple, his hand shaking violently. I don't need a bomb to kill you. I can still put a bullet through your head. Panicking again, Chloe broke free from the crowd and tried to rush forward, but I caught her by the shoulder with one hand, holding her firmly in place. She kicked, hit, and clawed at my chest like a wild animal. Ethan, you bastard, let me go. I have to save Blake. Bang! A deafening gunshot shattered the night air. Chloe went instantly rigid, her eyes wide with horror as a body slowly slouched over and collapsed onto the pavement. But the person who fell wasn't Blake. It was the gunman. A red laser dot danced across the driver's side window. I released my grip on Chloe, and she immediately scrambled forward, throwing her arms around Blake's trembling body, sobbing hysterically. Blake, thank God! I finally saved you. I looked past them toward the edge of the perimeter. A tactical police team flooded the area, led by a sniper holding a suppressed rifle. Hours ago, I had placed an anonymous call to the police SWAT division, providing them with the exact time, location, vehicle description, and threat details, specifically instructing them to position a sniper on the adjacent rooftop and wait for my signal. Once I confirmed the radio jammer was active and the bomb threat was neutralized, the sniper executed the green light order. Watching Chloe and Blake weeping in each other's arms, I let out a long, cathartic breath. Chloe, I said softly, my voice carrying across the pavement. I helped you save him tonight. Consider my debt to you for saving me from the river 5 years ago, fully paid. From this moment on, we owe each other nothing. Chloe's tears instantly stopped. She slowly let go of Blake and turned her head toward me, her face pale as paper. You knew? She whispered, her voice trembling violently. Wait, then all those times before. I cut her off before she could finish. 999 times. I remember every single second of every single loop. I met her horrified gaze dead on. I remember the arguments. I remember the insults. And I remember the 99 times you murdered me with a knife. Chloe gasped, taking a voluntary step back as if struck by lightning. I don't blame you, I continued calmly. But I have had enough. Eating plain noodles for breakfast for nearly 1,000 days is enough to drive anyone insane. We are done. I turned my back on her and walked toward my car. Ethan, wait! Chloe scrambled up and chased after me, grabbing my coat desperately. Ethan, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. Please, let's start over. I gently but firmly unclasped her fingers from my jacket. You don't need to apologize. You saved my life once, and you took it 99 times. We are even. I've already cleared all my belongings out of the apartment. The place is yours. No, I won't let you go, she sobbed, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind. You promised you'd marry me. You promised you'd protect me for a lifetime. You can't break your word. I turned around, looked down at her tear-stained face, and smiled faintly. You were the one who broke your word first, Chloe. You broke up with me less than 10 minutes ago, remember? Her weeping faltered. Up close, I noticed something shocking. Deep wrinkles had formed around the corners of her eyes. Her skin looked dull, and her hair had lost its luster. Using her power nearly 1,000 times had cost her almost 3 years of her total lifespan, visibly aging her physical body. Stop using your power, I said softly, giving her one final piece of advice. Go live a peaceful life with Blake. With that, I turned around, stepped into my car, and drove away without looking back. Because I was the primary informant who had tipped off the police, Iskanforbrust, I was taken to the local station for questioning. The detectives were intensely curious about how I possessed such a precise foreknowledge of the hijacking and the bomb threat. I brushed their questions off with a vague explanation about receiving an anonymous tip online. Since my actions had ultimately prevented a massive terrorist explosion and saved multiple lives, they eventually released me with a formal statement. When I stepped out of the police station, my watch read exactly 11:30 p.m. I still have time, I thought. I drove quickly across town to a quiet street corner, stopping in front of a cozy storefront across from where another tragic accident was scheduled to happen tonight. It was a small, elegant cafe. Standing near the outdoor decorative fountain in front of the shop was a young woman wearing a graceful white dress. Her name was Hannah, the owner of the cafe. I checked my watch, 11:50 p.m. Suddenly, I spotted an unstable balcony flower pot, wobbling precariously on the 3rd floor directly above where Hannah was wiping down an outdoor table. I sprinted forward, grabbed her by the waist, and pulled her forcefully backward, just in time. Crash! A heavy clay flower pot slammed onto the exact spot where she had been standing a second prior, shattering into pieces. Hannah gasped in shock, clutching her chest as she looked at the broken ceramic, then up at me. I glanced at my watch, 11:51 p.m., just in time. During the very first loop 3 years ago, when Chloe had failed to save Blake and we had gotten into a terrible fight, I had walked into this very cafe in a miserable mood. That night, I had witnessed Hannah being killed instantly by that falling flower pot. In subsequent loops, whenever Chloe reset the day, I made it a point to come to this street around midnight to save Hannah. Except for the loops where Chloe had murdered me early in the day, I had managed to save Hannah nearly 900 times. Over time, saving her had become a comforting ritual for me. Every time I saved her, a grateful Hannah would invite me inside and brew me a warm cup of coffee. We would chat for a few minutes before midnight struck. Those brief, quiet conversations with Hannah had been the single glimmer of hope that kept me sane through the soul-crushing agony of 1,000 temporal resets. Hannah looked at me with a warm, relieved smile. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I would have been killed just now. Let me make you a cup of coffee to express my gratitude. I looked down at my watch as the hand approached midnight and smiled softly. No need for coffee tonight, Hannah. Maybe next time. Honestly. Drinking coffee at midnight every single day for 3 years gets a bit repetitive. Hannah blinked in confusion, not understanding what I meant by 3 years, but she smiled warmly anyway. Well, if you don't want coffee, let me get you something else. Here. It's the last drink of the night. Thank you, I said, accepting the glass. I stood on the patio, staring intently at the second hand of my watch. 11:59:50 p.m. 11:59:55 p.m. My heart hammered against my ribs. In a matter of seconds, I would find out if the temporal loop was truly broken. 11:59:59 p.m. Tick. 12:59 a.m. The date on my digital watch flickered and changed. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Nothing shifted. The air didn't ripple. The world didn't reset. Hannah, noticing me staring blankly at my wrist, giggled softly and lightly pinched my cheek. What's wrong with you? You look like you've just seen a ghost. I snapped out of my daze, looking around at the quiet night street. Everything was real. Time was moving forward. Because Chloe's power was strictly limited to resetting time back to the start of the same calendar day, once midnight passed and a new day officially began, her ability could no longer undo the past. The loop was finally, permanently broken. Overwhelmed with pure, unadulterated joy, I took a huge gulp of the ice-cold Coke. It tasted incredibly sweet. 1,000,000 times better than any coffee I had ever had. Tomorrow is finally here! I laughed out loud, grabbing Hannah's shoulders in excitement. I'm not coming back to yesterday ever again. Hannah frowned playfully swatting my hand away. Hey! What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying my cafe is so terrible that you'll never come back? I laughed softly, my eyes crinkling. No, that's not what I mean. It's hard to explain, but don't worry, I'll visit your shop all the time from now on. Just no more late-night coffee. Hannah smiled brightly. Deal! Ethan. A cracked, hollow voice suddenly sounded from behind me. I turned around. Standing at the edge of the patio was Chloe. She looked utterly destroyed. Her hair was messy, her clothes were disheveled, and her face was covered in dried tears. She looked like a ghost wandering the night. Chloe took a trembling step toward me, her eyes filled with desperate agony. Ethan, please, can we talk? Just give me 5 minutes. My smile faded, replaced by cold indifference. There's nothing left for us to talk about, Chloe. I paid my debt to you, and we broke up. Please leave. No, I love you, Ethan. You're the only one I've ever truly loved, she sobbed wildly, reaching out for me. Blake was just my childhood friend. He was like a brother to me. I only wanted to save him. Please, forgive me. Let's start over. Before I could reply, Hannah suddenly stepped in front of me, wrapping her arms securely around mine and glaring at Chloe. Listen, lady, Hannah said sternly. It's not polite to harass someone else's boyfriend. He already told you it's over, so please leave us alone. Chloe froze, staring at Hannah's arm wrapped around mine, her eyes filled with pure rage. You? Chloe hissed, her voice dripping with venom as she glared at Hannah. Is this the woman you were saving every night behind my back? You've only known her for 1 day, and you're already replacing me with her? I looked Chloe straight in the eye and nodded calmly. To you, it was only 1 day. But to me, I spent 1,000 days watching you choose another man over me. 1,000 days was more than enough time for my love, for you to die, and for me to fall in love with someone who actually cares about me. Chloe stared at me for a long moment, and then she suddenly burst into a hysterical, unhinged laugh. Ha! Ha 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 ha! Her laughter echoed horrifyingly through the empty street, sending a chill down my spine. Ethan, do you really think you know everything about my power? Chloe whispered, her eyes twisting with dark obsession. You think passing midnight frees you from me? You are mine. You will always be mine. If I can't have you, nobody will. My gut twisted with a sudden sense of dread. What are you talking about? Chloe smiled sadistically. My temporal reversal power has a hidden ultimate form. I have one chance in my entire life to cast a grand rewind, a reset that can send me back years into any timeline I choose. She stepped closer, her voice terrifyingly quiet. It comes at a fatal cost, but I don't care anymore. If I reverse time back 10 years, I can rewrite our history from the very beginning. I will find this woman 10 years in the past, and I will make sure she disappears from this world before you ever meet her. What will you do then, Ethan? You wouldn't dare, I shouted in horror. Watch me, Chloe screamed. Instantly, Chloe's entire body began to emit a blinding, violent white aura. Right before our eyes, an appalling transformation took place. As the temporal magic surged through her, her youth was rapidly drained away. Her long brown hair turned snow white in seconds, her skin withered into deep, ancient wrinkles, and her spine bent double. Within moments, she had aged into an 80-year-old woman, barely able to stand, without clutching a wooden cane. The sheer force of the temporal wave began tearing at the reality around us. Ethan! Hannah cried out in terror as the light began consuming the street. Realizing what was happening, I grabbed Hannah's hand with all my strength, pulling her tight against my chest. If time was being dragged back 10 years, I needed to leave her a clue. I screamed at the top of my lungs into Hannah's ear over the roaring wind. If you remember this, come to 36 Oak Street in Riverdale. Before I could say another word, the blinding white light swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes again, the warm golden glow of a summer sunset was washing over me. I looked around in absolute shock. I was standing on a familiar residential sidewalk. Everything looked nostalgic yet distant. I quickly checked my hands, then pulled an old flip phone out of my pocket. The date displayed on the screen confirmed my worst fear, July 15, 2016. I was back 10 years in the past, the summer right after my high school graduation. I was even wearing my old high school uniform. That crazy woman actually did it. I muttered under my breath, my blood running cold. Suddenly, the slow, rhythmic tapping of a wooden cane sounded nearby. An elderly woman with stark white hair, bent posture, and deeply wrinkled skin shuffled slowly toward me. It was Chloe, or what was left of her after sacrificing decades of her life to trigger the 10-year reset. She leaned heavily on her cane, looking up at me with a triumphant, sinister smirk. Ethan, do you regret it now? You rejected me, and now that woman doesn't even exist in your life anymore. You'll never find her. A wave of pure rage surged through me. I raised my fist, desperately wanting to punch her smug, manipulative face, but looking at her fragile, 80-year-old body, I knew a single strike would probably kill her on the spot. I forced myself to lower my fist, trembling with frustration. Chloe, you've successfully made me despise you, I spat through grit teeth. Chloe's smirk faltered, and a tear leaked from her cloudy eyes. I only did it because I love you so much, Ethan. Please. I still have a tiny bit of power left. If you promise to stay with me, I can try to. Nah, I roared, stepping close to her face. Look at yourself. You look like you're 80 years old. If it weren't for your physical state, I would have knocked you out already. Startled by my fury, the fragile old woman stumbled backward, lost her balance, and collapsed onto the pavement, her wooden cane rattling away across the asphalt. Before she could hit the ground, a pair of gentle hands suddenly caught her from behind, steadying her. Careful there, ma'am, a sweet, familiar voice said softly. Chloe gasped, turning her head, and froze in absolute horror. I turned around, and my heart nearly stopped. Standing there, holding the elderly Chloe upright, was a young girl wearing a cute sundress and a bright, radiant smile. It was Hannah. Hannah helped Chloe sit safely on a nearby bench, then turned to look at me, her eyes sparkling with familiar warmth and mischief. She smiled playfully and said, "You're not the only one who can carry memories through time, Ethan. My jaw dropped in sheer disbelief. Hannah, you remember? My mind raced back to the cafe in the previous timeline. Every night after I saved her, she had served me coffee. But on the second to last loop, I had casually mentioned, coffee gets boring after a while. Fruit juice is better. And on the very last loop, before I even asked, she had brought me fruit juice instead of coffee. She had retained her memories across the loops all along. I remembered everything, Hannah giggled, stepping past the stunned, trembling Chloe and walking straight into my arms. I pulled Hannah into a tight, desperate embrace, laughing with overwhelming relief. After a long moment, Hannah pulled back slightly, looking up at me with a sweet blush. So, I just graduated from high school this year. What about you? I grinned back at her. What a coincidence! So did I. Hey, why don't we both apply to the same university in Riverdale? Hannah's eyes lit up, and we both burst into laughter at the exact same time. I turned back to the trembling, white-haired Chloe sitting miserably on the bench. I picked up her wooden cane from the street and casually handed it back to her. Old lady, I said with a smirk. At your advanced age, you really ought to stay indoors more. If it weren't for kind young people like us, you wouldn't even have someone to pick up your cane. Pff. Hannah snickered, covering her mouth. I took Hannah's hand, lacing my fingers through hers, and together we turned our backs on Chloe forever, walking side by side down the sunlit street toward our brand new future. So, I asked, looking down at Hannah with a smile, how about a graduation trip? Hannah grinned brightly, squeezing my hand tightly. Sure, where to? Let's go visit a little cafe on Oak Street, I smiled. 10 years early.